In 1776, a group of brave colonists in America made a bold decision. They were ordinary people, farmers, merchants, and craftsmen, who had grown weary of the oppressive rule of the British Crown. The seeds of discontent had been sown over many years, as the colonists faced increasing taxes and restrictive laws imposed by a distant government that seemed indifferent to their needs and aspirations. They were tired of being ruled by England. The British monarchy, under King George III, had tightened its grip on the colonies, leading to widespread resentment. The colonists felt that their rights as Englishmen were being trampled upon, and their voices were not being heard. They wanted freedom to govern themselves. The idea of self-governance was not new to the colonists. They had been practicing forms of local government for years. Town meetings and colonial assemblies had given them a taste of democracy, and they yearned for more. So they signed the Declaration of Independence. This historic document, primarily authored by Thomas Jefferson, was a bold statement of their intentions. It was a declaration to the world that they were no longer subjects of the British Crown, but free and independent states. This document declared that all men are created equal. It was a revolutionary idea at the time, challenging the established social hierarchies and monarchies of the world. The Declaration asserted that everyone had inherent rights that could not be taken away. It proclaimed the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These words would become the foundation of American ideals, inspiring generations to come. The Declaration was not just a statement of independence, but a vision for a new kind of society. This momentous occasion marked the birth of a new nation, the United States of America. The colonies were now united in their quest for freedom, and the American flag became a symbol of their shared identity and aspirations. The Declaration of Independence was a powerful statement. It was a bold assertion of their right to self-determination and a rejection of tyranny. The Founding Fathers knew that this declaration would change the course of history. It ignited a fire in the hearts of the American people. The words of the Declaration resonated deeply, inspiring many to take up arms in defense of their newfound freedom. It was a call to action that could not be ignored. They were ready to fight for their newfound independence. The Continental Army, led by General George Washington, was formed to face the might of the British military. These soldiers were not professional warriors, but ordinary citizens driven by a desire for liberty. The road ahead would be long and difficult. The Revolutionary War would test the resolve and endurance of the American people. They faced harsh winters, shortages of supplies, and the constant threat of British attacks. But the spirit of the American Revolution was born. The Minutemen, ready to fight at a moment's notice, embodied the determination and resilience of the colonists. Their courage and tenacity would become legendary. The fight for independence was not easy. Battles raged across the colonies, from the fields of Lexington and Concord to the siege of Yorktown. Each conflict brought new challenges and sacrifices. The colonists faced a powerful enemy in the British Empire. The British military was one of the most formidable forces in the world, well-trained and well-equipped. The odds were stacked against the American revolutionaries, but they were determined to fight for their freedom. The desire for independence and the belief in their cause gave the colonists the strength to persevere. Their revolutionary spirit was unbreakable. They formed an army and fought bravely against the British. The Continental Army, though often outnumbered and outgunned, displayed remarkable bravery and ingenuity on the battlefield. The Revolutionary War was a long and bloody conflict. It lasted for 8 grueling years, with many lives lost on both sides. The cost of freedom was high, but the colonists were willing to pay the price. But in the end, the colonists emerged victorious. The British surrender at Yorktown in 1781 marked the end of major hostilities. It was a moment of triumph and relief for the American people. The victory over the British was a turning point in American history. It signaled the birth of a new nation, free from colonial rule. The celebrations that followed were filled with hope and optimism for the future. It showed the world that the United States was a force to be reckoned with. The success of the American Revolution inspired other nations and movements around the globe, demonstrating that the pursuit of liberty and justice was a cause worth fighting for. It also set the stage for the creation of a new government. The principles laid out in the Declaration of Independence would guide the drafting of the Constitution, shaping the democratic foundations of the United States. The journey to independence was arduous, but it paved the way for a nation built on the ideals of freedom, equality, and justice for all. After winning independence, the newly formed United States faced a crucial task. They needed to create a system of government. They wanted a government that was strong, but not too powerful. The Founding Fathers gathered to write the Constitution. This document would outline the framework for the government. The Constitution established a system of checks and balances. Power was divided among three branches of government: the executive, legislative, and judicial. This ensured that no single branch could become too dominant. The Constitution also guaranteed certain basic rights to all citizens. These rights included freedom of speech, religion, and the press. George Washington, a hero of the Revolution, became the first president. He led the nation with wisdom and integrity. He set important precedents for future leaders. The young nation faced many challenges in its early years, but the Constitution provided a solid foundation for growth and stability. The United States was now a republic. It was a nation governed by the people, for the people. This was a radical experiment in democracy. The world watched with anticipation as the United States embarked on this bold new chapter. With the East Coast settled, Americans looked westward. The early settlers, having established their roots along the Atlantic seaboard, began to dream of the vast uncharted territories that lay beyond the horizon. The promise of new opportunities and the allure of untamed lands ignited a spirit of exploration and adventure. The vast lands beyond the Mississippi beckoned with promise. These expansive territories, rich with fertile soil and abundant resources, seemed to offer endless possibilities for those willing to brave the unknown. The Great Plains, with their sweeping vistas and open skies, became a symbol of hope and potential for countless families. Pioneers and settlers embarked on arduous journeys to claim their piece of the American dream. They traveled in wagon trains, enduring harsh weather, treacherous terrain, and the constant threat of disease. These journeys were not for the faint of heart, but the promise of a better life drove them forward. This westward expansion brought about significant changes. It reshaped the nation's geography, economy, and social fabric. New states were formed, and the boundaries of the United States were pushed ever westward, reflecting the growing ambition and determination of its people. It fueled the growth of the nation. Towns sprang up along the trails, and infrastructure such as roads, bridges, and railways began to connect the vast expanses of the country. These developments not only facilitated further migration, but also laid the groundwork for the economic boom that would follow. It also led to conflict with Native American tribes. As settlers encroached on their lands, Native American communities were forced to defend their territories and way of life. These clashes often resulted in violence and bloodshed, leaving a lasting impact on both sides. The discovery of gold in California in 1848 sparked a massive migration. News of the gold strike spread like wildfire, drawing thousands of fortune seekers from across the country and even from overseas. This event, known as the California Gold Rush, became one of the most significant migrations in American history. Thousands of fortune seekers, called 49ers, rushed westward. They traveled by land and sea, enduring grueling journeys in the hope of striking it rich. Mining camps sprang up overnight, and the landscape of California was forever changed by the influx of these determined individuals. This gold rush transformed the western landscape. Once quiet and sparsely populated, the region quickly became a bustling hub of activity. Towns and cities grew rapidly, driven by the economic opportunities that the gold rush provided. It led to the rapid development of California. San Francisco in particular saw explosive growth, transforming from a small settlement into a major city almost overnight. The architectural and cultural landscape of California was forever altered by this period of intense development. The expansion westward wasn't without its dark side. The relentless push for new territories came at a great human cost, particularly for the Native American tribes who were displaced from their ancestral lands. This period of expansion is marked by numerous tragedies and injustices. The Trail of Tears stands as a stark reminder of the human cost of expansion. Thousands of Native Americans were forcibly removed from their homes and made to march hundreds of miles to designated reservations. The journey was brutal and many did not survive the ordeal. Native American tribes were forcibly removed from their ancestral lands. This forced relocation was a devastating blow to their communities, disrupting their way of life and causing immense suffering. The loss of their homelands and the harsh conditions of the reservations left a lasting scar on Native American history. They were relocated to reservations west of the Mississippi River. These reservations were often in remote and inhospitable areas, far from the fertile lands they once called home. Life on the reservations was challenging, with limited resources and harsh living conditions. This tragic event resulted in immense suffering and loss of life. The Trail of Tears is a somber chapter in American history, a reminder of the devastating impact of westward expansion on Native American communities. The resilience and strength of these communities in the face of such adversity is a testament to their enduring spirit. It remains a dark chapter in American history. The events of this period continue to resonate, reminding us of the complexities and contradictions of the American expansion. While it brought growth and opportunity for many, it also brought pain and suffering for others. Despite the hardships, the American spirit of resilience persevered. Pioneers and settlers faced numerous challenges, but their determination and ingenuity allowed them to overcome obstacles and build new lives in the frontier. Pioneers adapted to the challenges of the frontier. They built homes, cultivated the land, and established communities that would become the foundation of the modern American West. Their efforts laid the groundwork for future generations to thrive. They forged new communities and cultivated the land. These early settlers transformed the wilderness into productive farmland, contributing to the agricultural wealth of the nation. Their hard work and perseverance were instrumental in shaping the American landscape. The westward expansion played a pivotal role in shaping the identity of the nation. It fostered a sense of adventure, rugged individualism, and a belief in manifest destiny. These ideals became central to the American character, influencing the nation's development for generations to come. It fostered a sense of adventure, rugged individualism, and a belief in manifest destiny. The spirit of the American frontier, with its challenges and opportunities, continues to inspire and shape the nation's identity. The legacy of this period is a complex tapestry of triumph and tragedy, resilience and loss, that remains an integral part of American history. The issue of slavery cast a long shadow over the United States. From the nation's inception, the question of whether to allow slavery had been a contentious and divisive issue. The southern states, with their agrarian economies, depended heavily on the labor of enslaved African Americans to sustain their vast plantations. This reliance on slavery created a stark contrast with the northern states, where industrialization was taking root and the moral opposition to slavery was growing stronger. It divided the nation along moral and economic lines. The North and the South developed distinct cultures and economies, each with its own set of values and priorities. The North's burgeoning industries and urban centers contrasted sharply with the South's rural, plantation-based economy. This division was not just economic but also deeply moral, as the North increasingly viewed slavery as an inhumane and unjust institution that needed to be abolished. The southern states relied heavily on slave labor for their agricultural economy. Cotton, tobacco, and other cash crops were the backbone of the southern economy, and the labor-intensive nature of these crops made slavery an integral part of the South's way of life. The wealth and social status of many Southern families were built on the backs of enslaved people, creating a powerful incentive to maintain and defend the institution of slavery. They resisted calls for abolition. Southern leaders and politicians argued that slavery was not only essential for their economy, but also a positive good that provided a stable and ordered society. They used religious, economic, and pseudoscientific arguments to justify the continuation of slavery, framing it as a benevolent institution that civilized and cared for African Americans. The northern states, with a growing industrial base, increasingly viewed slavery as a moral abomination. The rise of abolitionist movements and the spread of anti-slavery literature galvanized public opinion in the North. Figures like Frederick Douglass, Harriet Beecher Stowe, and William Lloyd Garrison became prominent voices in the fight against slavery, highlighting its brutal realities and calling for immediate emancipation. In 1860, the election of Abraham Lincoln as president proved to be a turning point. Lincoln, representing the newly formed Republican Party, ran on a platform that opposed the expansion of slavery into new territories. His election was seen as a direct threat to the Southern way of life and the institution of slavery. Lincoln was a staunch opponent of slavery. Although he initially sought to prevent its spread rather than abolish it outright, his moral opposition to the institution was clear. His speeches and debates, particularly those against Stephen Douglas, articulated a vision of a nation where freedom and equality were paramount. His election sparked fears in the South of federal interference with their way of life. Southern states saw Lincoln's presidency as a harbinger of doom for their social and economic systems. The fear of losing their autonomy and the potential for federal laws that could dismantle slavery led to a sense of urgency and desperation among Southern leaders. 11 Southern states seceded from the Union. They believed that secession was their only option to preserve their way of life and protect their economic interests. This act of defiance set the stage for a monumental conflict that would determine the future of the United States. They formed the Confederate States of America. With their own constitution and government, the Confederacy sought to establish itself as a separate nation where slavery could continue unchallenged. This bold move was a direct challenge to the authority of the United States and set the stage for a bloody and protracted conflict. The American Civil War had begun. The first shots were fired at Fort Sumter in April 1861, marking the start of a conflict that would last 4 years and claim hundreds of thousands of lives. The war would test the resolve and endurance of the American people like never before. The Civil War was a brutal and bloody conflict. Battles like Gettysburg, Antietam, and Shiloh became synonymous with death and destruction. The war saw the introduction of new military technologies and tactics, making it one of the deadliest conflicts in American history. It pitted brother against brother, father against son. Families were torn apart as men enlisted to fight for either the Union or the Confederacy. The war brought immense suffering and hardship to countless American families, leaving a legacy of grief and loss that would endure for generations. The nation was torn apart by the horrors of war. Cities and towns were ravaged, and the landscape was scarred by the devastation of battle. The human cost was staggering, with soldiers and civilians alike bearing the brunt of the conflict's brutality. Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 declared the freedom of slaves in Confederate territories. This landmark decision transformed the nature of the war, making the abolition of slavery a central goal of the Union's efforts. It also paved the way for the eventual passage of the 13th Amendment, which would permanently abolish slavery in the United States. This shifted the war's focus. The fight was no longer just about preserving the Union, it was also about ending the inhumane institution of slavery. Union soldiers, now fighting for a cause that aligned with the principles of freedom and equality, were further motivated to achieve victory. It became a fight not just to preserve the Union, but also to end slavery. The liberation of enslaved people became a symbol of the Union's moral and political resolve. The war effort took on a new dimension, one that sought to redefine the very essence of American democracy. After 4 long years of war, the Confederacy surrendered in 1865. The Union was preserved. Slavery was abolished. The end of the Civil War marked a new beginning for the United States, but it also left the nation with the daunting task of rebuilding and healing the deep wounds that had been inflicted. The nation began the long and arduous process of Reconstruction. This period aimed to reintegrate the Southern states into the Union, and to address the complex issues of civil rights and social justice for the newly freed African Americans. It was a time of significant progress, but also of considerable resistance and setbacks. The Civil War remains a defining moment in American history. Its legacy continues to shape the nation's identity and values. The sacrifices made and the lessons learned during this tumultuous period have left an indelible mark on the American consciousness. It tested the very fabric of the nation. The Civil War challenged the United States to live up to its founding principles of liberty and equality. The struggle to reconcile these ideals with the reality of a divided nation was a profound and transformative experience. It ultimately reaffirmed the ideals of liberty and equality for all. The end of the Civil War and the abolition of slavery were significant steps toward realizing the promise of a more just and equitable society. The war's legacy serves as a reminder of the enduring importance of these principles in the ongoing quest for a more perfect union.